Hey, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Elemental Educator Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler, and if you're tuning in for the first time, thank you so very much for checking out the show. If you like what you hear, be sure to like, subscribe, follow on Instagram, Apple, YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from. Today, I get to sit down with Craig Aaron Martins. He was such an incredible conversation. I really hope you enjoy it. I'm just going to let us jump right into it. So get ready to let the alchemy of education ignite your passion for learning.
This is the Elemental Educator, the podcast where we kindle the fires of dialogue with the alchemists of education. We're here to embark on a journey where ancient wisdom meets the contemporary world of education. On Elemental Educator, we dive into the deep waters of adaptability, feel the grounding earth of core values, ride the swift winds of change, and ignite the fiery spirit of risk-taking. Fire, earth, wind, water. This is the Elemental Educator. And now your host, Tyler Como.
Welcome, alchemists, to another episode of the Elemental Educator Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler, and today we're diving into the incredible journey of our special guest, Craig Aaron Martins, an expert in equity and belonging in education and transformative leadership. We're going to explore his experiences, insights on transformational leadership, and the actionable steps you can take from his message. Craig, thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, I'm so grateful that you extended the invitation. So this should be fun.
Yeah, it's something I'm trying to grow and see where it can take off to. And so sourcing out, you have an incredible story and background that I think, not that I think, that I know that I want to be a part of helping share with the world. So I really appreciate, again, getting the opportunity to just hear your journey and your experience. Yeah,
I will share what I can.
awesome. I want to start with unpacking who you are and where you got to now. So because the people that listen to my podcast might not know who Craig is yet. And so, Craig, I would love to hear your story and who you are, where you are now, and how you got there.
Oh, you have to do this over a good meal down in New Orleans where folks are swearing from side to side. Some of it could be from the libations, but I enjoy a good meal, good company, and just an opportunity to share space and time because I think that's where, for so many of us, we lose sight of what the power of community. And so for those who don't know, I'm Craig Aaron Martins. I'm a CEO, founder of CCM Education Group. So I have my own education agency. And so the great work that we get to do is hoping to stand in the gap and work with school leaders and organizations that have an arc around creating cultures of belonging and excellence. And as a not, I can't even call myself a former. That's hard. Educator, school leader, superintendent, and more. That's been the arc of the work that I've been able to do and called to serve, and that's the work I enjoy. So that's kind of part of what would be just a small smidge of my background, but I'm also was born and raised in New Orleans, so I still love the Saints, even though they're in a recovery mode. I'm a Boston Celtics fan, and they're doing pretty well. I love to cook when I can, travel where I can, get into the gym and do what needs to be done for this cornbread fed body here, as well as I enjoy a little bit of bourbon from time to time. So that is a little bit of who Craig Aaron Martins is. I also happen to have a great hubby who is, I think, on a work call right now.
There we go. Thank you so much for sharing that with me and everybody listening. I'm curious though, you had to have a plan to start CCM Education Group from somewhere, and where was the heart of that? What rooted you in wanting to pursue that?
For me, it have called on me to do a host of things. I have been in community organizing. I have built and constructed mentoring programs. I've been called to speak and lead workshops on different things across my journey as an educator and as a school leader. And I made a decision. August 1 was my first day not being part of someone else's organization in doing and championing some incredible work on the ground. And I just made that decision because at the last organization I served, 4 years of working through pandemic after pandemic, and that work is very tough to bring an entire community along with you, as well as the adult, just every family, every scholar, every staff member, all of the community partners we work with. That work is tough, and I needed an opportunity to have some respite. And so I made a decision to step out on take a leap of faith and become an ed consultant. And I could say that today it feels very gratuitous, but I'm not gonna lie, it was very scary, that safety net, whatever that looks like in today's world, of knowing I have this ongoing relationship with an organization that's paying me and has benefits and things like that. That that's all I've known since I started teaching when I was 21 back in New Orleans. So not having that sense of, oh, I know this check is gonna come on the first and the 15th, unless I do work. Like, it's been something. I haven't had to work anybody's club or be a bar hopper or anything like that. So I'm doing all right.
There you go. First, it sounded like you got two paychecks there biweekly. We're just monthly where I live, and so I wish we were that biweekly. That sounds like it'd take a lot of stress out of there. You talked about how well, you're in a spot now where you're comfortable and you're feeling more secure with it. But that risk that you initially took to become your own ed consultant and move away from an organization and be your own CEO, that is a massive risk. And I'm trying to get to what core value led to you wanting to make that decision?
Say more. I want to make sure I'm really answering your question here.
Everything you're doing. You
Mhm.
get to control what you're doing, how it's looking, how it's flowing, how it works with the people around you. Was that a large part in why you chose to branch off and do your own thing?
I will say there is an incredible master teacher named Dr. Erica Jordan Thomas, who has a organization called, which is a number, but she has a organization that's called like Wealthy Black Educator. And it's evolved from seven figure educator to wealthy black educator. But for Dr. Erica Jordan Thomas, she instilled in us that we already have the gifts of really architecting great outcomes for young people and the communities we serve and being in the day-to-day stage of today's classrooms and school buildings, and how some of us have gifts that could actually expand beyond the scope of what we just do in our sphere. And it felt compelling. And knowing that I was in a village of other folks who was also thinking about this and being their own bosses and being able to leverage their gifts and skills that would be more expansive than just the small sphere that they may occupy. And then I also have some colleagues like my podcast host, Krista from SEL and EDU, who is full-time ed consultant, has our own organization, Resonance Ed, that's doing tremendous work in the field of social emotional learning, and she's been doing some incredible work. I also have Tammy Bowman Musiowski, who's out in Hawaii, but she does work across national. So I'm in the community of folks who said, hey, I think that our impact can be beyond just the scope of our zip code or the state that we reside. And so why don't we take a leap of faith? So I lean heavily on many of them in regards to taking this journey seriously, and knowing I also have incredible support by my husband as well as the folks who are in my village.
Thank you for sharing. It resonates with me because it sounds like your journey and your core and your root about wanting to impact more than just what's immediately around you. That's very much rooted in what I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to reach a global perspective, which I think we can truly get to.
Yes.
Did your earth ever shift when you went from teacher to principalship to executive director, superintendent to CCM Education Group?
Absolutely. So, two things. One, I was I was nurtured and nourished to be someone who creates spaces. And that is part of the bedrock. My parents did it. My father, being a U.S. Army veteran, truck driver, Mississippi bred. Mom, born and raised in New Orleans. She was an adult educator, Black Power movement enthusiast, worked for insurance company. Both of them did whatever they needed to do to make sure that we understood the core values of hard work, resilience, genius beyond just making sure you got all A's, but their ability to leverage relationships that are absolutely powerful by just bringing people together and having conversations, learning more about each other's history, building those relationships, which were critical, are part of my core values in equity, excellence, collaboration, community, and knowing that those are driving forces for me. And all of that carries no matter where I've been. I wanted to make sure that I carried a spirit of I'm about the least of those. So I'm going to champion any policies, any practices, any systems and structures that will empower the least of those in our environment to greater heights, then everyone wins. And so when you have that core value, that shows up in making sure I am incredibly complimentary and amplifying the genius, the collaboration, the contributions of our janitors, our cafeteria workers, those who are holding those stop signs, the stop traffic so our kids can get into school, from those who are immigrant families who come by, and making sure that when they are acknowledged, we affirm them, we love on them, that they will continue to do what they do, as well as our teachers, as well as our schoolies, as well as da da da. But those folks who are unsung heroes, who are the day to day, those are the ones who my parents always said you need to look out for them, make sure that they're good because they're going to be great to you, and that has been responsive, and that has been a continuation in my life. So when I think about the shifting was mindset. I shifted from I have a class, like my first job was a seventh grade reading teacher. I had 5 classes where young people came and saw me all day. And I became not only a hearth for my 5 classes, but kids who heard through them, like Mr. Martin is the cool person you need to come see, come hang out at lunch. I became that person, and kids came from all over. They didn't have to have my class to come by. Same thing then when I got to Boston, whether or not I was a fifth grade teacher or a tech specialist, I had kindergartners come to my class, young people who had no business, like doing all kind of stuff they ain't got no business doing. They were doing it wherever they were doing it. And they had to spend time with me. And then when I was appointed from being a third grade all boys teacher in Boston to becoming a principal. My classroom was different because now I have 25 staff members who are now looking to me for strategies, insights, sometimes a break, a little candy, a little snacks in the office, to someone who would see them and actually amplify the smallest and greatest of their genius, as well as the classrooms they served. And then I got to a bigger sphere and a bigger sphere as I continue to ascend. And what I will say that I hope is true as people talk about me in spaces where I'm not in the room is that people know I'm rooted to making sure our young people thrive and win. And I want that in whatever ways that makes sense for them. But they will also speak to the fact that I listen deeply, I care hard. I'm very much about what I care about, and I'm unapologetic about it, even if it ruffles people's feathers. And I'm willing to create space and time and bring resources to people so that folks can network and connect and get what they need if that is residing within the spaces that they occupy.
Chris, you made me so nervous because when I first asked you, did your core values shift as you went from role to role? You said yes, and then went on to explain how they didn't shift. And I was sitting here at the start, ready to challenge and be like, well, that wasn't your core value then. But you went into this big, passionate story around you care about the people. It's about the growth of the individual. It's the kid. It's the person that matters. And that's apparent in your role as a grade 7 teacher when you have people coming into your classroom that you said they have no business being there. They're there
Mhm.
because they saw your heart. They're there because they saw your passion. And then when you moved on to that role of principalship, now everybody has business being there, hopefully for good reasons. But it's probably a lot easier because they see that you care and they see that passion. So that core value of doing what's best for the people around you, doing what's best with your heart, and being an unwilling to negotiate on non-negotiable factors is huge, and it's so
Mhm.
important for the advancement and the growth of transformational leadership,
Yeah.
which is such a nice segue to talk about your expertise in equity and belonging in education. And I want to unpack because you self define as well as a transformational leader and enact transformational leadership.
Mm.
What does that mean to you?
Mm. Um, each place that I have been granted an opportunity to serve as a servant leader, they were missing something or they lost something. That losing of something could have been a sense of identity, a sense of connection, a sense of being seen. They have held on to a narrative that no longer serves them. And my job and role has been to serve as a mirror, sometimes a window, sometimes a door, to present to them a different reality that actually could be real, like really could be more than perception. For young people in the classroom, and I'll speak to like my third grade all boys class. And I was told these boys are that whatever is the worst attribute you can assign to ascribe to a young person, they had them. And I remember one specific young man who was a second time third grader, and he was reading at the primer level. So he wasn't even at a kindergarten level. And I was told by the school leader and a host of folks, oh, he is, has been this, that, and the third. And I saw him pass by as this was being the narrative that folks were joking about. And he hears this. And so what I said is, look here, little boy, let me tell you something. And I got on my knees, I got right there at eye level. I said, let me tell you something. On my watch, you will be great. I don't know what happened before I got here, but I'm here today. You will read, you will do well in math, you're going to be awesome in my class. I've got you. I just need you to trust me. And for him, of course, he didn't believe it in the beginning because he had to see whether or not I was going to be consistent and how hard I was going to hold on to him, even when he felt unlovable, even when stuff poured out because life had continued to life on him. And when he saw that I would never embarrass him, I would put him in position where he could read some things and do that well because we had done so much work. And we got him to a place by the time, the end of his time, that he was reading fairly well and able to actually thrive and became like an honor student for mathematics. We saw that grow and nurture and on and beyond. And we saw this happen not for just one life, but 29 boys in a classroom where I said, we're going to shift the atmosphere so that you have you have a new way of seeing yourself. And I'm going to present opportunity for you to thrive and be doing this in the public sphere. And so we had folks come from all over to spend time and celebrate and be in company. So I did this thing called a Community Day of Scholars, where they got to showcase their brilliance and show all the portfolio work. And here you have parents who always came and was upset because they came because there was always this negative thing. And then now I'm calling them in to say, hey, we're going to celebrate. Can you cook? Can you bring a dish? We're going to do this. And it was electric because now these families are like, whoa, like showing my son not only your example of how to love hard even when things get tough, but you are showing him that he is really the beautiful, smart soul we've always known him to be. And that was great. And then I did that same thing with teachers because teachers also want to know that they are seen in their genius even when the times get tough. Every day is a marathon for the life of any educator I've been with. And what I found was the same magic. I'm going to spend time understanding your walk, your journey. How did you arrive here? What are your hopes, your dreams, what your desires are? I'm going to show you some of that and present that, whether or not it's like observational data or, hey, I'm going to do in my Mark memo. I want to highlight and spotlight something awesome that you're doing. And for some, that went really well. Some were hesitant. It took 2 or 3 years before teachers really trusted me. But the same magic, I'm going to show the world these different mirrors and windows of you. And I'm going to invite folks to come to spaces so they can see you thrive and then help you to co create a platform where whatever it is that you want to do, because that is your genius and that's your gifting, that's your passion, we're going to amplify that. And so I'm grateful that I had the opportunity in each place that I've been to create such spaces, do these things, and see different outcomes. And so at the in the class from the classroom level, we exceeded the state average time and time again. When I became a principal, we had 320% growth from in a 3 year span. So we went from almost being taken over by the state to becoming one of the best in the city of Boston, which the Mayor Walsh at the time, really echoed a great deal of that. And in the last organization, we saw incredible growth, and we saw staff retention. And I saw staff retention at my when I was principal. I couldn't. No one wanted to leave. The only time I had teachers or a staff member leave was because we didn't have the budget to keep them. Otherwise, I retained the same teachers for 2 years straight, which is unheard of and unreal in most places. And so I think that sometimes speaks to the value of what I've hoped to bring to transforming communities.
There's so much to unpack in that, Craig, and thanks again for the incredible stories and backing it up with some of the support that you just shared with us. There's a big difference when you break down the barrier of competition and replace it with the avenue of collaboration. And it's so powerful how you interacted with those young boys to just start in a space that says it's okay where you are. Let's see where you go.
Hmm.
Right now, with young minds, that's pretty easy to navigate. They're easy to buy in because they don't have as much influence. And you talked about in your principalship role, there was some adversity that was faced.
Hmm.
And I want to get to an actionable item here. So for anybody that's in that similar situation, they're stepping into that leadership role. Where do they start in beginning to action that process of building trust?
Mm. It's a great question. It's a great question. So, for me, actually thinking I'm thinking about my March framework, and I think my March framework is probably one of the best memorable ways that one can do this. So for me, when I think about March framework that I designed, and I designed this at the intersections of George Floyd, may he rest in power, and all of the social political rhetoric that we had going on, and we still have it today. But what is it that you can control within your sphere today? And so what I think about and use today as my mantra is one, mind, body, and spirit. Make sure you start with taking care of yourself. And I know that so many people talk about that in many different ways, but even if it's 30 minutes of waking up and just mindful meditation, for me, I think I'm a romantic. I got candles, like this is Bath and Body Works. I have some Palo Santo here. I got some sage, whatever you need. But starting the day off on you, your breathing, your ability to generate the kind of energy you want to walk with, like you Beyonce, right? Or Taylor Swift, if there's some Swifties. Anyway, but I also think about what are you doing for your body? And so something I never forgot from Oprah is eating things that will help you to thrive. I never lost that. And so there's a lot of times when I'm thinking about what am I putting into my body that will allow me to generate the kind of energy and vibrance and resonance that I want. What are the things I need to take and not partake in so much because my spirit needs to be right? And I think about who is and is not in my village today, who is and is not in proximity to me because I want my spirit to be right. I know I'm anticipating I'm going to have some folks who are just not, we don't have a kindred energy. They got their own journey, and I have to bubble up and bubble wrap this body like all of this because I'm like, look, what I ain't gonna let you do is have me off kilter because you got a bad attitude for whatever reason. So I think getting yourself together and making sure that you start your day. I also think about how do you amplify good news, and I think that some of us love drama. I love Real Housewives series. Like I am not gonna lie, But I know that people still have shared with me that when I'm sharing good news about what other people are doing, not about me, but what other folks are doing, that also speaks to a sense of like he is seeing something else in other folks and he's bringing that to the community. Then I think about how do we rise with resilience? How do you get into a place of making sure that, hey, today I didn't hit my goal or I didn't drink 64 ounces of water. I only drank 24. It's okay. I can get to 32 tomorrow. Like, how do you get to a place of just saying, hey, I might have fell, in this moment. I might not have been the best human being. Do I have an opportunity to make something better tomorrow or the next moment you have an opportunity? And then how do you create the brave care spaces that are necessary? And when I think about brave care spaces, I'm thinking about the fact that you can go with all of you, broken, unbroken, partially there, partially not, someone who just wants to be in the space. But how do you create a space of truth and light and give people grace and know that they're going to wrestle with some things, ideas, conversations, and you just create that space that can nurture that? And then how do you hold on to hope? And so, what are the rituals, the affirmations, the ways that you actually do that in a meaningful way? And so for me, I'm like, my ancestors have had much tougher experiences than I. And today is can be tough. And there are definitely some moments where it's very nutty if you just look at what's going on in the world. But when I look at the small ways that life is continuing to manifest in a beautiful way, the fact that I got my herb garden growing, or that there's this particular butterfly or bird that seems to keep coming by to just say hey, that there's a presence there, as well as our children and them playing and laughing and so many other things. If you hold on to those small things, the small ways that humanity is still ticking along in light, you don't get dragged down into the dark and shadows. And so that's my way of building relationships, trusting relationships, that it's been part of the arc of who I am and who I'm evolving to be.
Craig, I asked for one actionable piece and I feel like I just got the whole professional development workshop here. I love that. But it all comes back down to your message is actually really unique from everybody else I've talked to about this,
Mm,
because your message is to work on yourself before you work on others.
mm,
And there's so much to be said about you need to be in the right space to be able to put others in the right space and to help others get to the right space.
mhm,
Because if we're not there, we're not giving our all to what we're trying to do.
mm,
Now, I'm assuming that this message has a little bit of a shift towards what you're doing with CCM Education Group. And I was
mm.
hoping you could help me unpack what this education group really is and what it offers.
We offer hope and light, hugs and humor. We offer the opportunity to collaborate and partner with anyone who is trying to make a shift. No, whether or not it's small or great. It could be for themselves through coaching. It could be for their group, a group of folks. Like tomorrow, I'll be working with a group of educators and education leaders to create a new vision for a school that feels like it's on fire. So my job is to listen deeply and then reflect back. Here's what I'm hearing. Is this part of the bigger vision you want? And let's start thinking through, here are small things you can do in order to prepare for this vision that you have forward. But we also provide training, and we do that work. We do strategy work. But I just think that we just continue to center the folks who we work with. We listen to them deeply to see what it is that they're trying to accomplish, and then we try to galvanize all of the energy and resources and expertise we can, just to center them in the best positions to win and thrive in their organizations.
And I'm not surprised that with your earth being so rooted in yourself and taking care of others and being there for others, that your your consulting group is about the same process. It's about finding what do we really value and how do we get there. Why without even being in the meeting tomorrow about your education company out talking about trying to find a new vision for their school that's on fire. You're going to probably be rooting them in what is your expected outcome? Where are you wanting to go with this? What does it look like? And how can we work together to create your vision
Yeah.
that roots in your guiding principles? So
Mm.
it's so powerful in that essence. Craig, you do so many other things that I want to start unpacking here as well, because you said earlier that you're also a co-host in the SEL in EDU
You,
podcast.
yes.
So when people listen to that, what can they expect to hear?
Uh, Authentic conversations about our human experiences in schools and organizations. So Krista and I have been friends for over a decade. We're now at about 12 years of friendship and met, at a professional development in Washington, D.C. And Krista, I remember I was walking outside and she was like, "Hey, what are you up to?" And I was like, "I'm out here doing duty." And she said, "How would you like to do a podcast with me?" And I said, "Sure." I anything. I'm like, if Krista asked me to do it, then I'm like, okay, cool, because she's just such a wonderful beacon of light. And our podcast now, we're not at 100 episodes yet. I feel like that would be great for syndication. But what we've been able to do is have some very impressive conversations about the varying intersections of social emotional learning and what does that look like and being. And so we've talked with so many folks who have intersections, whether or not it's STEM and STEAM and art. It is physical education. It is AI. This season, we're focusing on adult well-being, and because the folks who are leading, the folks who are in the trenches every day, they don't always get the light and respite to be able to say, can I be honest and say, I'm tired, I'm exhausted. Oh, we know. So let's talk about what are the ways that you were trying to navigate and manage this thing. And how do you do that for yourself, as well as how then do you marshal that level of wellness and being for other community you lead? And it's been fun. Chris and I just get on and we do. And the incredible folks we've gotten an opportunity to connect with is inspiring in ways I can't even convey.
My book, my platform, my philosophy that I share is I call it three tiers of engagement. We have emotional engagement, behavioral engagement, and cognitive engagement. And we
Mhm,
can't get to a cognitive level until you've established a certain level of emotional and behavioral expectations and engagement levels.
mhm.
It's such a powerful message to unpack, and your topic of well-being and mental health and filling up your bucket are all about that emotional engagement piece, where we can't even begin to think about cognitive until we feel safe, we feel cared for, we feel valued, and we can start building trust. I want to jump into many other things you're doing, but before I do that, I think it's very clear to the listeners that you have done a lot and you've done a lot of different things along the way. And everything you've done has been rooted in your earth around, how is this benefiting me? How is this benefiting others? How can we build each other up in that capacity? But nonetheless, it's been a lot of change. And so I want to take a moment and talk about the water and the air elements, about embracing adversity, going with the flow. And so throughout all of these transitions, how did that process, how did you find a way to make that process easier?
Very honest. Being a black queer man, black queer educator, I've had my own journeys with my singular identities and being male and what does that mean and being in today's classrooms. What does it mean to be black and male and be in today's classrooms, and what that expectation is, and then you add the layer of queerness to it, and all of that creates these cyclones of interrogation. And I've spent so much of my time in therapy and in listening to others and leaning in to experiences with some of my colleagues and friends to just better understand how do we navigate a space that doesn't always it wasn't constructed for us, and it isn't always safe enough for us. And I had a conversation with one of my former bosses, who was superintendent of our district here in Boston, and he we met at a brewery, and it's great Korean beer, but he said, "You are so happy, and I'm so excited that I get to meet this guy." And I was like, "Well, say more." And he shared, I'm just happy with what I'm seeing in social media and all of this because we haven't seen each other in person in years, since he left. And I said to him, I said, being black and gay as an educator in an elementary classroom, it wasn't safe. He was like, oh, I know. I was like, and then I became a school leader. And I was like, he was like, oh yeah, I know. We had the conversations. And for folks who knew at the highest levels that they love and adore that I'm a champion for young people, I'm a champion for children, and I am a champion for great outcomes at the work that we do with the adults and creating spaces for them. Even if the space wasn't safe for me, it was my duty, my call as an educator to make sure that everybody else felt good and safe and seen and affirmed, even if it meant me denying parts of me. And I got so close to sharing elements to who I am. And then I find out now at this wonderful ripe age that I'm at that there were folks who knew at the times of intersections when they met me that I was queer. I'm 6'3", very much a Care Bear. If you check the internet, you might find me in a spandex outfit somewhere. But what folks have shared with me was, we knew and we still loved you. And I'm like, but you never said that you knew all these other parts that I thought weren't as present. They were like, oh, we knew. But we made a decision to love you anyway, because we knew you was about the kids. We knew you was about the community. That was what was important to us. And so when I think about this now, and I'm still having these conversations with my therapist about, well, which person, which Craig is showing up, I am looking at, is this the 8-year-old Craig? Is this the 10-year-old Craig? Is this the 23-year-old Craig? Is this the 31-year-old Craig? Is this the 40-year-old Craig? Which one of these am I bringing into this conversation or into this experience, or still hasn't, which of him has not gotten the healing that he needs in order for him to no longer surface when key things are happening? And this is some folks will talk about shadow work and or body work. And so like the work I am doing is to better recognize that some parts of me have not fully healed but are on their own journey, and that I don't allow that part of myself to show up and be harmful to others. So let me do the work. And also to stifle me and my ability to thrive in the today. And for some folks, they may not be able to piece all of that together. But what I've come to understand, especially when we talk about the families that we serve and the young people we serve and some of the educators that we serve, sometimes when people have a bad day, you don't know why they're having a bad day. And you don't know all these layers and other currents of things that they've carried into the space to be at the intersection of meeting you. And it is always important to give grace and be in a space of grace and just listening, and then just being silent enough to say, this thing right now that I'm experiencing is not necessarily about me. Okay, let me step back, listen more so I can better understand who I'm talking to and what is going on with them. And what is it that they're trying to convey, even poorly, but they're trying to convey this. And let me make sure I'm present enough so that I can give back to them, here's what I'm hearing. Or say, hey, can we pause? Maybe we need to pivot because it seems like you're having a moment. And let us reconvene when it seems like we both can be present with one another and engage in it with intention. And so as I think about adversity and all of the challenges that have surfaced across my life and career, the work I'm still doing is still trying to listen actively within myself, but also to the person who's in front of me. And I'm also trying to make sure that at the end of the day, that we are clear about our intentions of why we're having the conversations, doing what we're doing, and hopefully moving us closer to it, or being able to say, you know what, I'm a pause. Maybe we need to pivot. This doesn't feel right. And I can name that I'm okay with stepping away from something that may not be helpful to both of us who are trying to do this thing that we say that we're doing, but we may not be doing.
There's something to be said about practicing what you preach.
Mm,
And you're very one of your very first stories about, approaching that boy in grade 3 and getting down on your knees to his level
hmm.
and letting him know that you've got him.
Yeah.
You're doing that with yourself. You are putting the people around you that support you and build you up. And change is hard, change is tough. I
Hmm.
can't even begin to imagine the adversity you've faced and the challenges you've faced. But you are surrounding yourself with a team of support and a team of love.
Yeah.
And that makes that process a little bit easier. Now we get to jump back into all the other really cool things. And I think your words were amplify. Was it amplify the excitement? Amplify the
Amplify
good?
good news. Yeah. Amplify good
Amplify
news.
good news.
Yeah.
And so I want to amplify that you are the founder of the Brown Boys Network and Scholar Culture International LLC.
Yeah.
Can you walk me through what this is and where that came from?
Brown Boys, the Brown Boys Network, and Brown Boys Boston Ed Camp. Both were my focus initially was on creating brave spaces for Black and Brown youth, male youth, because when I was a fifth grade student at a Catholic school, my teacher put me out every day for months and had me sit outside, like outside, not, oh, he's just in the hallway. I like our classrooms like old Catholic building, but you had classrooms on one level and another level, and then there was a walk path. And so she literally staged my desk outside and said that I was being disruptive, but it was like I was smart and I got everything done and got it right. And so I'm like, you clearly don't know how to deal with smart people because this is the reaction. So from that experience, I said, I never want another male child to ever go through what I went through. So I said, my arc will be to really focus on what are the strategies, practices, and things we can do to make sure that they will thrive. And let me help do that in a more broad scale. So like I can't teach you how I do what I do. I could try. I could tell you I do this or do that, but it's hard for me to say, well, this is the recipe that you can duplicate because you don't have me. You don't have me in all these spaces. But what I wanted to do is bring other folks around who also carried a banner, a torch, a plea, if you will, that they wanted to have better outcomes for Black and Brown males because the research says Black and Brown males today have higher rates of suicide ideations. Their mental health access to mental health is probably not as widespread or as accessible for mental health supports as we would like. And we look at the way that Black and brown males are generally depicted in the world, and we have these, so many access to opportunities, networking, practices, working with families who have Black boy children, little kings, if you will, scholars in their own right. And how do we help to protect them? How do we help to nurture them? How do we create systems that are not going to continue to break them down from early on and have them on pipelines to prison? And so some of the work we were able to do was to disrupt that journey for some young male youth, but the work continues. And so my CCM has absorbed that work. And then Scholar Culture International is really designed on practices, architecture of really great practices for young people in today's classrooms. And I've always used the term scholar since I was a seventh grade reading teacher. That was how that's always how I've characterized the students I've served because I recognize they are scholars and genius in the things that are important to them. It's not always about me. G.I. Joe could be your thing. Pokemon could be your thing. Pet Patrol is your thing. You are a genius and you know all these things. Cool. You are a scholar of Nintendo Switch or whatever the thing. And when they hear themselves depicted in a way different from the way that they've been known, but it's a positive representation for them, they've held on to it. And so, Scholar Culture International was created with a beacon and focus on practices and structures that will amplify the best parts of who they are.
Those are two incredible organizations that you've created there.
Mm.
And one thing, just in exploring your own resume as well, the starting line is that you are a results driven executive and school leader.
Mhm.
And when we look at these organizations, when we look at everything you're creating and everything that you're talking about, what do those results look like for you and how are they driving that leadership?
Data is the DNA. It's the DNA, honey, all day, all time. I'm just saying. I've come to understand that is what people look to first. So in classrooms, they want to know young people are reading. They want to know that they have really great literacy skills and ability to compute and do complex mathematics. How do we situate the students, the young, to understand their progressions and journey? And so when young people know I have the ability to, like, I need to do A and B and C in order to Z. Cool. Let me help you figure out your roadmap to that. And I have always had students at the center of understanding the data on the day to day. This is how many questions you got out of the 100 points. Or let's do the math. Let's figure it out. And then I broaden this to what we do for adults who didn't like data. And I had to show them, hey, here's how we read it. Here's how we understand it. Here's how you leverage it in a way that can be positive and moving, not just you, because you're in your feelings about it. If it doesn't go your way. But then how do I help you to look at this is just a moment in time? You will have a different moment in time that could be better and greater than this moment. And then how do I bring that to a family sphere? And so folks know me. They know, like, I am good about sharing it. I'm good about calculating it. I'm good about breaking it down so it feels accessible to our parents and putting them in position so that they can make better decisions with whatever it is the outcomes that they have at the moment. And that's been part of the transformation. Generally, people get scared because they're like, oh, these numbers look scary. And it's, let's get a good story that resonates for you so you can understand how this will move you, how this will move your kid. This is how it'll move you in your practice. And that, again, you layer it with, I care about you, I see you, I want you to thrive and win. So we're doing this with the purpose of these are all interconnected as part of the journey, and that this is just telling a story of where we are right now. We will be at a different place. What is the story you hope will happen? And we've done all right. We have done okay in the places and spaces I've occupied.
Data, data, whatever we want to call it, it's everywhere. And
It is.
any piece of information around us can be converted into some sort of data that drives our decision making process. And
Mhm.
that was such a nice way to put it, Craig. We, I'm looking at our time here and it's already 51 minutes. And I'm going, where did it go for me? Because this has been incredible. I'm going to jump to a few of my favorite parts here where I'm
Mm.
just curious for people listening, what are you hoping that they can start actioning in their lives tomorrow from your
Mm.
message?
Embrace the small wins. Embrace the small wins. Whatever that means for you. Like I said, it is not about did you lose that 1 pound by the end of the week. It's about, hey, did you cut out some of the sugar that may increase your likelihood of gaining that pound or losing that pound? It could be that, hey, did you make that one phone call to that one person that you've been apprehensive to talk to, but you want to share some good things with them, or you just want to say, hey, I see you. So say embrace the small wins, whatever that is for where you are in the journey, and choose to look at it from that lens that all of these will build up like the little marble. So if you read the little fairy tale or the fable about the pigeon that would try to the water up from the bottom of the jar, the vase, or the cup, you got to pebble it until that water rises, and it will create the kind of movement you deserve.
And what does your future look like?
I believe it's bright. I am more booked today than I've ever been in my professional career. I have a lot that my hands are in, a lot of really great things that are going on. So for me, I'm really excited about I'm doing like a Black Boy Joy Summit. I'm finishing a book that I'm working on. I got a second book already in mind. I'm traveling across the globe and I'm excited about that. And that some folks are actually hiring me to come out and speak and do some stuff, which is cool. It's been part of my dream. And so for me, those are really great things that I think feel good to folks who are looking for like Instagram likes and follows. But if I'm really being more granular and more holistic, I'm looking forward to the fact that at this time and in all the things that I've experienced, that I have a sense of joy and purpose and centering in a way that I've never had it. And that has been important to me. And it's not something I'm going to let go of by any means.
Thank you for sharing that. Speaking of social media, though, what is the best way for anybody that's listening that wants to get a hold of you? What's the best way for them to do that?
You can find me. I'm like, you put Craig Martin, Boston, you'll find me. But I'm on the socials. So I'm generally Craig Martin on LinkedIn. I have a website, CCM Education Group.co. If you put Craig C. Martin in Boston, you will find me.
Yeah, and we'll link all of the socials in the
Yeah.
description of this episode as well. This is my favorite question, and it's actually really the last question that I ask people. So, aside from the actionable item for people to start tomorrow in their lives, what advice are you giving to anybody that's listening?
I have went through some stuff that if we had time, people like, I don't even know how you still breathing. But I can tell you that for everything that was designed to break me, for people who said really nasty things, for people who went into the public square and tried to denigrate my being, for folks who thought that they denied me opportunity, close off spaces, try to exile me, I promise you, look at where I'm at today. Unstoppable. Because I have a core belief that even if it is even if it's a delay, it is still a gift to me because I will at some point be in the place I was designed to be because I'm in purpose and I'm in passion. And as long as I continue to stay and centered in purpose and passion and know when to pivot, I'll be all right. And I lean in on my village and I love them back because the folks who have spoken my name and put me in places where I have the ability to be here today, I will hold on to them and love on them because they were with me during some of the hardest moments of my life and career. And that is something that no amount of money will ever be able to buy. So I'm grateful for them for all of that they've poured into me so that I could be here and talk to you today.
Craig, it has been an absolute pleasure of mine to sit down with you. I can't wait to touch base with you again for another episode and see where we're at that point.
All
Thank you
right.
so much for joining the Elemental Educators on our own journey.
For inviting me, and it has been an absolute honor and pleasure. Thank you.
You've been listening to The Elemental Educator. Our aim is to illuminate optimal educational practices on a global scale. And second, we want to shine a light on the expertise and knowledge that Tyler brings to educational institutions. He's not just a talking head. He's a practicing educator, a school principal, armed with a master's in educational administration, and on the brink of completing his doctorate. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, find us on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Elemental Educator. And to contact us, fire off an email. See what I did there? Fire off. Okay. Send an email to elementaleducator@gmail.com. See you next time on The Elemental Educator.